Hello everyone, very good morning, very welcome to Exam B. And today, me, Chandraprakash Joshi, and Prachi Agarwal ma'am, we are going to talk about what is happening in the global financial market. हम बात करने वाले हैं क्या इंडिया में भी हमें बैंक फेलियर्स देखने को मिल सकता है. प्राची मैम, थैंक यू, थैंक्स फॉर ज्वाइनिंग द सेशन टुडे.
Good morning, CP sir.
सो
And
हम बात कर रहे हैं दोस्तों इस बात पे. आज की डेट में आपने देखा होगा क्रेडिट स्विस का प्रॉब्लम, एसबीबी बैंक फेलियर प्रॉब्लम एंड ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल मार्केट आर फेसिंग द टर्मोइल. व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन इन द इंडियन मार्केट? प्राची मैम, आपसे मैं ये प्रश्न पूछना चाहूंगा, डोंट यू थिंक that the bank failures happening in the global financial market are posing a serious risk on the Indian banking system? I have two important points here to substantiate this point. First, Indian banks have closer to 6% gross NPA today. और ये नंबर बढ़ जाएगा अगर आरबीआई अलाउ कर ले इंड एएस का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, विच आरबीआई इज कंटिन्यूसली पोस्टपोनिंग और अभी तक डेट नहीं बताई है. Second point, in the last 5-6 years, we have seen major crises like PNB scam, ILN FS scam, PMC बैंक का प्रॉब्लम जो हुआ था, डीएचएफएल का प्रॉब्लम हुआ था, एंड देन द यस बैंक क्राइसिस. अर्लियर ऑल्सो, प्रायर टू दैट, वी हैव सीन फेलियर्स ऑफ यूनाइटेड वेस्टर्न बैंक, ग्लोबल ट्रस्ट बैंक, लक्ष्मी विलास बैंक. ऐसा नहीं है कि इंडियन बैंक्स हैव नॉट सीन द प्रॉब्लम. सो व्हाई वी शैल नॉट बी वरीड नाउ?
okay, so CP sir, I'm sure the questions they are coming to everybody's mind, and everybody is worried that there will be some problems in India also. But we really have to understand how things have moved in India, and not just these questions come up only when some crisis in the global economy happens. So we have to understand. Yes, we are closer to 6%. But this has been continuously coming down over the years. Our gross NPA have actually come down from a peak of almost 12% to 6% now. So we've reached half of that. Another metric, I think, looking at just the standalone number, another metric we should look at is also the coverage, provision coverage. Because gross NPA tells us what is bad.
Correct.
The provision coverage tells us how prepared we are in case that actually turns out and it actually eats into the capital or profit of the company, of the bank. How well prepared are we to protect our capital and profitability in that case? So that's also substantially high. The latest financial stability report that RBI gave, according to that, overall for the entire banking sector, our provision coverage is above 70%, right? To be precise, 71.5%, right? So that's giving a very good amount of coverage to the NPAs that are existing in the economy overall. So we are, to a large extent protected, and RBI keeps taking those steps that we are protected. If I talk about your other point, maybe this is not the true picture because RBI is delaying the implementation of IFRS and IND AS thing. So we have to again understand what that means is. Okay, in AS, basically the accounting standards are looking at moving the banks from just the rule based kind of measurement of the bad loans or the credit loss to a more dynamic model. Okay, the name is as the ECL model, the expected credit loss model. Okay, what this model does is it takes into account 2-3 aspects. One is the probability of default, कि कितनी probability है default होगी आपके एक particular asset में, financial asset में. Then क्या risk होगा, the loss given the default. अगर आपका loss actually हो जाता है तो आपका कितना loss होगा अगर default हो गया, right? And they also take into account another factor. So these are assumption based. So you need a sophisticated model to evolve to be able to do that. So I'm sure that RBI has been delaying this only because they are working on a draft paper, which is now expected to come out somewhere this year, to get this model in place. That's why the banks are better prepared to implement it. It should not be that they are not aware about how this works and they are making unrealistic assumptions, and based on that either we are very exuberant or we are too conservative, and
No,
both it hurts.
I appreciate that the probability of default, loss at default. So RBI also accounts these in the Basel guidelines.
Yes.
So it is not that RBI is not aware of it, or RBI didn't allow these to be recognized in the banking system. But here, my question or my concern is that RBI somewhere protects the banking system, and it does all its efforts to protect. And in that protection, so sometimes the banking system becomes weak. So today RBI is trying to protect, but suppose there is something happening in the market, especially now all Indian banks are also exposed to the international markets, and these exposure is growing day by day, because as the global economies are becoming integrated. So my worry here is the moment because of something RBI has to stop some protection, and then we see something which is not known today. Do we see any such situation?
Again, I say maybe not, because when you say they are protecting, and you yourself said ki we are already incorporating these aspects in Basel III norms, which have been fully implemented in India. So somewhere banks are incorporating all these risks in some form or the other, whether it is credit risk or it is liquidity risk or it is market risk, in their calculation for their capital adequacy. So, and we are actually more stringent than the global requirement, because the capital car requirement, the minimum car requirement globally is 8% as given by Basel III. We follow 9% in India. And if I say the other very important sector, financial में बोलूँगी, सिर्फ banking में नहीं बोलूँगी, because they are very closely related, is the NBFC. For NBFC, we follow even 15%. So it's not like we are only protecting. We are definitely taking steps. This is my opinion, that RBI is being vigilant on all aspects, trying to balance the risk at one end and also the growth in the banking, because credit is important for any economy overall. So it's that kind of a balance they are trying to maintain. And I'll come back to that Ind AS point. Actually, Ind AS has been implemented in NBFCs in 2019. Okay,
Mhm.
banks are the only ones left right now. Insurance also, the banks are the only one left. NBFCs they have implemented, and that could be one step towards understanding how the impact moves from on the financial institutions when they move to Ind AS. And it's happy to share that after moving to Ind AS, NBFCs have not seen a sharp deterioration just because of change in the reporting norms. So we should not assume that when banks do move to Ind AS, there will be a sharp deterioration. That something is being
Maybe possible.
hidden.
I hope that happens, because NBFCs, we all know NBFCs have so many problems, and we have seen some may be coming in future. But NBFCs, though these are RBI entities, sometimes the sector also says that they are step brotherly treated by RBI also. But NBFC sector has much more problem. But today my major concern about the global markets and India and RBI is कि RBI सच में क्या कुछ कर रहा है. Like we have seen, Fed Reserves has increased their rates closer to 4.5% during this time, and RBI Monetary Policy Committee, without applying their own logic, have been following the Fed Reserve, and that is what is happening in the market. कि इंडिया में we are still not very sure how much this is going to tame the inflation. Inflation is because of the crisis of the commodity side, especially the Russia-Ukraine problem, and because Fed is increasing the interest rate, RBI भी interest rate बढ़ाया जा रहा है. और तो और वो बीच में स्पेशल मीटिंग करके मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमेटी की, उधर फेड ने सरप्राइज दिया तो यहाँ पर आरबीआई को भी सरप्राइज देना होता है. तो आर नॉट वी फॉलोइंग टू मच फेड, और वी आर रियली अवेयर अबाउट व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर द इंडियन सिनेरियो?
I will say we are, following what an Indian scenario requires. Now, if this is holding true for the globe, it tends to look like we are following, but actually that's not true. India, RBI ka mandate hai to be able to maintain price stability, which is through inflation. And it's a known fact that inflation has been a problem in India, right? The factors may be global, and that's why this may be true for many countries, including US. राइट कि यूएस में भी इन्फ्लेशन हुआ तो उनके फेड को भी इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ाने पड़े. बट आई थिंक दिस इज एन इनकरेक्ट कंक्लूजन टू मेक कि आरबीआई ने इंक्रीज इसलिए किया क्योंकि फेड ने किया. It was an independent decision looking at Indian economy and what it can be, and we have also increased, and we are not following actually. अगर हम follow कर रहे होते तो maybe हमने भी 4.5% बढ़ाया होता, but we have not. We have increased it by 2.5%, yeah, since
The
we are
way
at
market
6.5.
reacts, आपने देखा होगा मार्केट के रिएक्शन क्या होते हैं, इवन न्यूज़पेपर कोट आल्सो, कि उधर फेड ने बढ़ाया है, तो एवरीबॉडी एक्सपेक्ट कि अब जो है आरबीआई भी पॉलिसी रेट बढ़ाने वाला है, एंड इट
But
हैज बीन हैपनिंग
that's
रेगुलरली इन लास्ट 1
maybe
ईयर.
actually the memory of ours is very short in that case, I will say, because हमें अभी वो दिखता है होता हुआ. And as I said, inflation is a problem not just in India, it's a problem globally, because there have been global factors that has led to this inflation. Russia, reasons, crude being because of which the crude prices went up, because of which inflation in almost every country in the world is going up and all. So why do we end up comparing it with Fed? There are other economies and other central banks also who are increasing rates. So I think it's an incorrect conclusion to draw like that, because the RBI is taking its own independent decisions based on how our economy is functioning, and they have actually because of that, inflation actually has been tamed to some extent. अगर हम inflation का भी data देखें India में, we have been able to bring it down. And even the government, if I also bring in the other aspect, inflation is not just one thing that can be done with the help of the monetary policy. Of course, it's a mandate वो है RBI का, तो RBI पूरा effort करती है. But there are also fiscal policy decisions that have been taken by the government in the country to support that. So we are not taking those into account when we put this broad statement that RBI is following Fed. So those collaboration with the fiscal policy also work. So
Okay,
yeah.
my view here is again कि हमको लगता है मतलब there is a comment on the chat कि Indian banks are resilient, but I sometimes feel no, it is not Indian banks or NBFCs which are resilient, but because they are being protected by RBI, so that's why there are not big failures. But when it comes to the protection, there is always a cost. There is a cost of the public money. So whenever there has been bank failures, so RBI has used public money in saving them, whether it is Global Trust Bank or Yes Bank or Lakshmi Vilas Bank. So is that morally right?
But why do we feel that there's a money that it's the public money that has been used whenever these banks have been merged? There have been crises and there has been a problem. RBI has been quick to react, or you can say come into picture and save the bank from crisis, because when they're saving, they're actually saving the public money, right? Because all these banks we know in India, the major funding comes through the deposits, and these deposits in large belongs to the public itself. Okay, so if we are merging a particular bank which is facing some kind of crisis and has a possibility of having a contagion effect in the entire banking system, and they are quickly merging it with a bank which can support the business and can keep running and is more mature to keep running that business and not letting it die, I don't think it is again a right way to look at it, that we are protecting the banks or we are using the public money. We are actually saving the public money if you look at it, from going away and to dust, because if you let it die, there's a lot of public money that will be lost
But
rather
bank
than.
as an institution, so here the bank as an institution, so they take an advantage of this hand holding by RBI, because they know somewhere RBI will come and save them, and they do kind of the business which otherwise was not supposed to be done. They lend to the entities which they know are in weak business, and there are high chances of getting the loan to NPA and the business to fail, but because they know ultimately the big brother RBI will come and save, and that's why I am saying the banking system is weak.
No, so you're very right, CP, to say that we should not have a wrong picture or a wrong image being built in people's mind, and that's why regulations are important, and that's why RBI keeps strengthening the regulations and the requirements, and the compliances are so important to be able to detect and to see that such things are not happening. And at an individual level, if certain decisions are taken which have led to a crisis in the bank, say I'll take an example of PMC that recently happened. Okay, so recently in the sense 2 years back. So in PMC, the problem that happened was, so we had the rules in place, okay, and the bank did lending to a large corporate, where when the rules say that you can have only a certain limit of exposure to a corporate house, and that is the idea, that we protect them from any kind of failure in the credit side that may impact the entire bank's funding. Now, they did not follow that. So it
Hmm.
is incorrect to penalize the depositors of PMC
Hmm.
for a rule that was broken by the bank. They did not follow it. Okay,
Hmm.
there have been penalties there where there have been ultimately we protected the PMC by merging it, not to entertain that we will be there to protect you. There have been punishments given to the wrongdoers. The board, they have been held responsible. That's why the corporate governance rules also in RBI and in banking are very, very important, because you are held accountable. So they have got the proper punishments and penalties accordingly at an individual level. But for PMC to be protected was only done to protect the depositors, and not the board members or the owners or the promoters at that level. Uh, we cannot say that RBI is promoting this aspect that, I am there to protect you and you do whatever you want. There
No,
are
I
very
agree with
strong.
your point that RBI has been always thinking of protecting depositors' interest, but there are times when RBI forgets the interest of the other stakeholders, and these are also member of public. The one important thing that comes to my mind is the 81 bonds of the Yes Bank, where these bonds were scrapped by RBI, and the case is still in the Supreme Court, because the investors in these bonds were also a large public, and they have invested in these bonds, trusting that this is a bank which has issued the bond, and this bank is regulated by RBI. So it's not that true that RBI's responsibility is not only just for the depositors but for the larger stakeholders in the banking system, and this is also general public.
Oh, yes, yes, very right. Because ultimately, whatever financial instruments, products that are there, it's very important that they are used wisely. There are always miscreants, in any country, any domain that would like to misuse a good product. 81 bonds, that's my opinion, that's my personal opinion. The case is again being debated still with Supreme Court also. There's no clear picture. But my understanding, it's a good product that was made to bring in both the aspects of equity and the debt. So it was a good product. The problem that arose was how it was sold and understood. So it's very, very important actually. That brings me another important aspect and a role of any regulator in any country is whenever new products, financial products are being created, it's very important that the awareness and the education related to it also is known to the people, right? Because this is what has happened. Frankly speaking, 81 bonds do carry that risk. So RBI may not be incorrect in writing it off, because it very as a feature, 81 bonds have that clause that they can be treated as equity if the bank is in a certain kind of crisis, right? So that feature remains. The problem comes when people don't understand, both the people who are selling it and the people who are using it don't understand the complexity or the actual features of it. So I can totally say that RBI as a regulator here would have a role of it. What is more important is making people aware, both the people who are selling it maybe and the people who are investing it also, to understand the risk. And that is why we see so many, even in mutual funds with cryptocurrency. I'm bringing another aspect unrelated, CP here. But many people, now people who are ready to take risk are asking again and again, why is RBI not letting cryptocurrency work in the country? Now you may say, that's also we are thinking, because we think the public will get involved, but they are not mature enough or evolved enough to understand the risks in that. And when they will get into the risk and losses, then again everybody will come back to RBI and say, आपने allow किया था, हमने invest कर दिया, अब आपकी responsibility है. So that cannot be the logic in saying कि RBI is not doing his job. So I guess somewhere RBI understands that, and that's why it's not allowing. And maybe yes, we have to still see how it turns out to be in 81 bonds, where RBI made a lapse, or where Yes Bank made a lapse, or where the investors made a lapse. But yes, it needs to evolve as a product. Any new product needs to evolve.
But when it comes to the product involvement, RBI का एक और issue है. तो RBI is very very conservative, and this I am saying my observation of last 20 years. RBI actually many a times doesn't allow the innovation to happen in the market. So RBI is a conservative, strong regulator, but there is a saying in the regulation that strong regulation is strangulation. So it kills innovation. And we know the Indian banking system has not been evolved. If we especially talk about the credit instrument in the market, उसके चलते हमारा बैंकिंग सिस्टम अभी भी बहुत ट्रेडिशनल है. So is it not correct?
To some extent, yes, and to some extent, no. CP.
Okay.
So to the extent, yes, I will say, like you said, कि maybe
आप
credit.
तो आरबीआई टाइप आंसर दे रहे हो.
Maybe because I am trying to read both the side,
हम्म.
maybe that ways. तो
Okay.
मैं yes इसलिए बोलूंगी कि yes credit side पे शायद इतना innovation नहीं हुआ है जितना हम globally देखते हैं. The kind of credit products that have evolved, especially derivative side पे इंडिया में उतना उसका use नहीं होता है जितना हम globally देखते हैं. They are very nice, good instruments, but yes, they carry a lot of risk also. But हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि how our market is structured, क्योंकि हमारे banking system में जो major funding आती है ना, वो आती है public money से. And it's not the borrowings and all. And जो हमारी lending काफी जा भी रही है, उसमें भी a large chunk goes to the retail. And then there is another large chunk, another big chunk is the corporate. So, we have almost equal division of the lending business also going towards retail and also corporate. So corporate may using an innovation in financial derivatives and credit products may be right. So to that extent, it's there. But yes, maybe RBI has been conservative to also keep in mind that we have a good retail chunk, and we also have on the liability side we have again the retail money being the major funding resource for the banking. So their innovation, now why I say no is because we cannot say that innovation is not happening. In fact, now RBI has become the torchbearer when it becomes to innovation in the payment segment. So why are we only talking about one aspect of banking? Because banking is not just limited to credit; it is also related to easing the entire financial movement of money in the country, and payments plays a very, very important role. And actually, that has been the major lever of financial inclusion in our country, if we say. So UPI is, the everybody globally is now studying how this has become so successful and how this payments is happening, and we are now even going into cross-border UPI payments. So and regulatory sandbox have been set up few years back by RBI. So that's also in promoting innovation. They've also got this innovation hub at RBI now, which was again looking at innovation that can happen. So it's not like RBI is not promoting innovation. It is just promoting innovation in different aspects, which it thinks is right for the country,
No,
for the
my question,
requirement of the
yeah, so
country.
you are right that on the payment space, UPI had been a great innovation and all other things also. But the bigger question here, RBI being the central bank of the country, is a very important role to play in the overall economic development. UPI type of innovation, how they are contributing to the national development, that I am unable to understand because the transaction that earlier used to happen in the cash is today happening in electronic mode. So that's the
So how
only thing.
not? How not? Because that is bringing so much of our informal business into formal sector. Then how is it not leading to
No, the
economic
business which is
development?
happening in the cash is happening through UPI now. So the business has not increased.
It has increased to a large extent, to some extent, because it has increased the reach of the small players also. Initially, if cash was the problem that people had to just move cash from bank or over long distances, that thing has gone away. So the reach of small businesses has increased. That has led to increase in the economic activity in the country. Maybe
So
a
are you
small
trying
player.
to say that small businesses are able to borrow from the banks because they are able to do more electronic transactions today?
दे आर बिकॉज दे कैन शो मोर बिजनेस इनिशियली वो कैश अगर आपके पास कुछ खाते ही नहीं है आपको कुछ दिखाने के लिए नहीं है आपको किस बेसिस पे कैसे कैसे एस्टिमेट किया जाएगा
वो
कि
तो आज
आपकी
भी स्मॉल
कितना
बिजनेस
इनकम है
करना नहीं चाहते हैं. Most of the SMEs do not want to maintain the book because of the obvious reason we all understand because of the tax issues.
No, so
not that. Yeah,
that's why, one step at a time. इसीलिए MSME की शायद definition change की गई है to bring more people in that ambit, because this was felt कि maybe there is a restriction to banks of, yeah, small entities अपने आप को grow नहीं करना चाह रही हैं
yeah,
to keep getting that benefit. So
yeah.
वो ambit बढ़ाया गया था. So,
Hmm.
as I said, one thing, कोई भी economy एक standalone point या one point से नहीं चलती है. There are many factors that contribute to it, and monetary and fiscal policy have to work in tandem or support each other at least. So those decisions to increase the ambit of MSME, the reach of businesses that have been allowed, the kind of exemptions they are given in tax, and the tax limits भी बढ़ाई जा रही हैं exemption की. So that all has helped and bring in more economic development.
Another important point which has come as a comment in the chat is about the cooperative banking system. So RBI, when it comes to the bank, all the data it will be published of the scheduled commercial bank. Cooperative bank को भूल ही जाते हैं, और cooperative bank में जितना बड़ा होल है, I think all of us know, but nobody recognizes. So if we take that also into account, so our banking system has much more gaps than we are recognizing.
तो कोऑपरेटिव बैंक ये होल था, मतलब
Hmm.
अभी है, उस होल को फिल किया जा रहा है. आई विल अग्री कि ये था. एंड वो अगेन डुअल रेगुलेशन, मतलब समझ
Yeah.
में नहीं आता था ना कि कहाँ है, बिकॉज कोऑपरेटिव स्टिल नाउ स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के अंडर जुरिस्डिक्शन में आते थे, देन बैंकिंग सम एक्टिविटीज वर अंडर RBI. So the step that the government took by amending the Banking Regulation Act and transferring the sole responsibility of regulation to RBI is of course going to give results, and RBI is already started bringing them at par in a phased manner. Of course there are regulations, उनको बैंक के लेवल पे regulations पे लाया जा रहा है. अब अगर आप सोचें कि भाई अब RBI के regulation के अंडर आ गया है, अब उनको सेम पार पे उनको रिपोर्ट करने के लिए बोल दिया जाए, तो दैट्स नॉट पॉसिबल. यू कैन नॉट ट्रांजिशन ओवरनाइट. So that why a phased manner has been included, and जो guidelines आई, अब तो 4 tiered level system बनाया है RBI ने cooperative banks को monitor करने के लिए, उनका to make them better, and उनकी corporate governance को भी improve करने के लिए. So those steps are being taken. So the whole has been recognized, I am sure. That's why all these steps have been taken, and it will lead to results and make it more stronger. तो जो loopholes हैं उनको भी हम plug कर करके Indian banking system को और resilient बना रहे हैं.
Yeah, I will come to my last point before we close today. But before that, सबके लिए मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ, those who are listening to this, the purpose of doing these discussions here is कि हम जो एग्जाम की तैयारी कर रहे हैं, उसमें ये चीज आपको काम आने वाली है डिस्क्रिप्टिव आंसर राइटिंग में और इंटरव्यूज में. इन एमसीक्यूज ऑल्सो दिस विल बी हेल्पफुल, क्योंकि अगर आपके कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर होंगे, यू विल बी इजिली एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई which options is right, because बहुत सारे questions जो आते हैं वो fundamental knowledge पे आते हैं. So these are the ideas of doing these discussions here, because there are multiple things which happens in the decision making, and especially when you are participating in interview or when you are writing descriptive answers. So these kind of understanding of the overall sector is very, very important. So Prachi ma'am, you want to add anything on this, or I will come to my last point before we close?
No, I think CB sir, you've covered that. It's very, very important, and concepts are very important for overall understanding. And whenever you can link the concepts with what is happening in the economy, that is when you get the best clarity, which helps you in every type of exam, चाहे वो descriptive हो, चाहे वो MCQ based or objective हो, and even in your interviews when you talk, in the interview stage. So yes, this holistic preparation definitely helps.
Yeah. So my last point is that we know that inflation targeting is important for RBI, and for quite some time the higher limit of 6% is being crossed, but still is not like too quick a response by RBI to increase repo rate by 275 bps over almost about a year, and hitting the interest rate in the market, which is going to the common people, affecting the EMIs of the common people. कि RBI जो मुझे लग रहा है कि ये फेड रिजर्व कर रहा है तो हम भी कर रहे हैं, तो इज इट नॉट लाइक टू क्विक ए रेस्पॉन्स? अगर कुछ क्वार्टर और हमारा इन्फ्लेशन 6% क्रॉस हो भी रहा है, तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है? व्हाट शेल बी द राइट वे? बिकॉज there is a lot of criticism of RBI in these stands.
Um, it is a difficult decision actually to take, to draw a balance between growth and inflation, because जब आप interest rates increase करते हो, yes, उसका impact growth पे, credit growth पे भी आता है, and inflation on the other side is also hurting the economy, क्योंकि अगर inflation को हम नहीं control करेंगे तो again, spending, हमें पता है, basic economics, spending goes down and again the economic activity goes down. तो वो डिफिकल्ट डिसीजन है, मतलब इतना ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट नहीं है आरबीआई के लिए भी वो डिसीजन लेना. सो दे ऑल्सो मॉनिटर मेनी थिंग्स, कि ग्रोथ कहाँ पे है, कितना इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है, कितना नहीं हो रहा है. एंड दैट्स व्हाई द विड्रॉल ऑफ अकोमोडेटिव स्टैंड्स, दे हैव नॉट बिकम हॉकिश. अगर हम स्टैंड्स की भी बात करें, दे आर इन द विड्रॉल ऑफ दैट मोड, बिकॉज इससे पहले वाला अगर हम पीरियड देखेंगे, दैट वाज हाई लिक्विडिटी पीरियड. कि जो एसवीबी क्राइसिस भी हुआ, it was good easy liquidity that was floating around, that ended up not into the productive sectors, but ended up reaching out to startups and all, which were again just following and chasing growth, and profitability was nowhere on anybody's mind. सो वो सब मनी कहीं ना कहीं पे यूज हुआ, फंडिंग में, इन्वेस्टिंग में यूज हुआ, रादर देन प्रोडक्टिव एक्टिविटीज टू अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट. इंडिया में जब लिक्विडिटी हमने करी थी इंक्रीज आफ्टर कोविड टू सपोर्ट द इकोनॉमी, आरबीआई ने काफी टारगेटेड लिक्विडिटी करी थी. वेन एवर दे वर रिलीजिंग लिक्विडिटी, दे वर टारगेटिंग इट टू द सेक्टर्स, लाइक एमएसएमई सेक्टर्स पे था, एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर पे था. So whenever liquidity was coming through LTRO, there was something called targeted LTRO also that was introduced that time by RBI. तो जब आप वो withdraw भी कर रहे हैं, वो पेन हमको इतनी बुरी तरीके से नहीं फील होता है, because it went into those certain productive sectors जहाँ पे investment हो पा रही थी. And even now the data is showing that the investment cycle in India is not been so badly impacted despite increase in the interest rates as it is being there in other countries relatively. So, that balance has to be maintained. I don't have a right or wrong answer. What RBI is doing is 100% right or wrong. But yes, वो balance RBI भी maintain करने की कोशिश करता है. They are also watching कि they don't stifle growth at the extent, at the cost of taming inflation. So that balance, I'm sure RBI will continue to maintain.
Yeah, thank you, Prachi ma'am, for having all these inputs. मेरे को भी काफी कुछ चीजें अपडेट करने को मिली हैं during these discussions. And one good thing on the RBI side is RBI's governor, Dr. Das, getting the best central banker award. So that goes also the credibility of the RBI, and especially in the situation today, global markets में जहाँ पे problems हो रही हैं, तो इंडियन बैंकिंग सिस्टम में कुछ तो बेटर है. दो आई हैव माय ओन क्वेश्चंस एज वी डिस्कस टुडे. लास्ट point our discussion is almost done, but the idea of this discussion is helping the student for preparation of various competitive exam, and the number one here is RBI grade B. I was expecting कि RBI grade B के नोटिफिकेशन की चर्चा जरूर होगी, कोई ना कोई कमेंट करेगा. तो अभी एक कमेंट आया है कि द एग्जाम इज expected to happen on 6th May or was expected to happen on 6th May. मेरे पास उसके लिए तो कोई कमेंट नहीं है, बट अगर ऑडियंस ने एक स्टोरी नहीं सुनी है, मैंने एक दो बार सुनाई है करमट सिंह की, तो मैं वो जरूर बोल देता हूँ, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ आवर ऑडियंस ऑल्सो इज वेटिंग फॉर something about when the exam is going to happen, whether it is RBI or SEBI or IFSCA. तो ये स्टोरी है करमट सिंह की. करमट सिंह in a village, and that village faces a severe drought because वहाँ पे इंद्र भगवान नाराज हो गए. एंड इंद्र भगवान ने कहा कि हम इस गांव में 12 साल तक बारिश नहीं होने देंगे, क्योंकि आपने बहुत ज्यादा डिफॉरेस्टेशन कर दिया है. So the villagers then pray to Indra God, Lord Indra, कि सर कुछ तो करो, मतलब 12 years is too much, so give us some idea, some leeway. So then Lord Indra says, अगर भगवान शंकर डमरू बजा देंगे तो बारिश हो जाएगी. और गांव वाले इससे पहले भगवान शंकर के पास पहुंचे, लॉर्ड इंद्र पहुंच जाते हैं वहां पे. भगवान शंकर से बोलते हैं, यू हैव टू प्रॉमिस मी कि आप डमरू नहीं बजाओगे, क्योंकि मैं गांव वालों को सबक सिखाना चाहता हूँ. तो भगवान शंकर वचन दे देते हैं, और गांव वाले जब आते हैं, भगवान शंकर उनको बोल देते हैं, मैंने पहले ही बोल दिया है, कोई डमरू नहीं बजेगा, कुछ नहीं होने वाला है, आप जाओ आराम से, कुछ नहीं कर सकता मैंने वचन दे दिया है. तो जब गांव वाले वापस गांव में पहुंचते हैं, करमट सिंह अपने खेत में हल चला रहा है। गाँव वाले बोलते हैं, भाई तुम क्यों हल चला रहे हो? हम तो मिल के आ गए हैं भगवान शिव से। भगवान इंद्र भी नहीं मान रहे, शिव भी नहीं मान रहे, कुछ नहीं होने वाला, 12 साल तक तो बारिश होगी ही नहीं। कर्मठ सिंह का जवाब है कि देखिए, बारिश नहीं होगी वो ठीक है, लेकिन मेरे को डर ये है कि मैं हल चलाना भूल जाऊँगा, मेरे बैल खेत को जोतना भूल जाएँगे। तो मेरे को अपनी प्रैक्टिस करते रहनी है, बिकॉज़ अब जब भी बारिश होगी, मेरे को अपनी प्रैक्टिस होनी चाहिए, मेरे को हल चलाना आना ज़रूरी है और मेरा खेत नहीं तो बंजर हो जाएगा। तो ही कंटिन्यू टू वर्क। पार्वती देख रही होती है, माता पार्वती देख रही होती हैं और सोचती हैं कि कैसे कर्मठ सिंह की हेल्प की जाए, जो बेचारा धूप में इतनी मेहनत कर रहा है। तो उनको एक सुझाव आता है दिमाग में, भगवान शिव के पास जाती हैं, बोलती हैं, भगवान जी, अगर 12 साल में आप डमरू बजाना भूल गए तो भोले बीइंग भोले बोलते हैं, नहीं, नहीं ऐसे कैसे भूल जाऊँगा, और डमरू बजा के दिखा देते हैं। इधर डमरू बजता है और उधर बारिश हो जाती है और कर्मठ सिंह की फसल जो है लहराती है खेत में। So this is the idea about the notification. I have told this story sometimes, so but I thought कि it's better to repeat, क्योंकि जो सच बातें हैं वो बार-बार हमें दोहरानी भी पड़ती हैं और अपने आप को भी रिमाइंड करनी पड़ती हैं। तो हमारा काम है कि हम अपनी प्रिपरेशन करते रहें। नोटिफिकेशंस आज भी आ रहे हैं, कल भी आएँगे, परसों भी आते रहेंगे, अगले साल भी आएँगे। इट इज़ मोर इम्पोर्टेंट व्हेन आई गेट दैट राइट अपॉर्च्युनिटी, बिकॉज़ अल्टीमेटली मुझे एक जॉब निकालनी है, मुझे एक सीट चाहिए और वो एक सीट लेने के लिए लेकिन मेहनत बहुत करनी होगी। तो दिस इज़ इम्पोर्टेंट टू डिस्कस एंड वी विल कंटिन्यू टू हैव दिस काइंड ऑफ डिस्कशन। प्राची मैम, इफ यू हैव एनीथिंग टू ऐड, प्लीज़ फील फ्री, अदरवाइज़ वी विल से थैंक यू फॉर टुडे।
श्योर सीपी सर, आपने बहुत एप्ट कहानी सुनाई है एंड ये डेफिनेटली काफ़ी मोटिवेटिंग है। आई एम श्योर आज के मतलब इनफैक्ट अच्छा लगा आपने जो बोला ना कि हम एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे कि काफ़ी चैट में ऐसे पॉइंट्स आएंगे नोटिफिकेशन से रिलेटेड। सो वी ऑल्सो सी कि आर ऑडियंस इज ऑल्सो इवॉल्विंग, उनको भी
या
समझ में आ रहा
आई
है,
वाज़
वो भी
हैप्पी टू
कर्मठ
सी,
सिंह बन रहे हैं।
करेक्ट, आई वाज़ हैप्पी टू
एंड
सी कि ये कर्मठ सिंह बन रहे
यस,
हैं, बिकॉज़ जो कमेंट है वो बहुत कम आया, बहुत कम
हाँ,
आया।
एंड काफ़ी अच्छे क्वेश्चंस थे, सो इट शोज़ कि सब पढ़ रहे हैं और समझ रहे हैं और न्यूज़ फॉलो कर रहे हैं एंड दैट्स एग्ज़ैक्टली व्हाट वी हैव टू डू। अगर हम अपने आप अपनी नॉलेज बढ़ाते रहेंगे, हम अपने आप कॉन्फिडेंट रहेंगे। सो ऑल द बेस्ट इज़ व्हाट आई विल से टू एवरीबॉडी।
या थैंक यू
थैंक
एवरीवन,
यू।
कीप प्रिपेयरिंग। बाय बाय, हैव अ गुड डे।